Sandwalker recruits mocked her exile, then begged mercy. When her empire unveiled the AI planet killer, beneath twin suns bleeding across the horizon, the transport bay rumbled open to reveal Commander Lyra Caine, exiled, abandoned, and written off as a relic. Whispers rippled through the Sandwalker recruits. Is that her? They sent a corpse. Yet in her silence lay purpose. Each scar on her uniform, each silent step across the scorched tile, spoke of battles forgotten by the Council. In E. These first 30 seconds, you'll witness how mockery breeds power, and how one woman's exile became the spark that reignited an empire. If you love dark sci-fi twists, hit subscribe now and join our legion. Lyra's eyes scanned the dunes beyond the base, grains of sand stashed with secrets, veins of dormant AI waiting to awaken. Tonight, she would return to the heart of the planet where humanity's forbidden experiment lay buried. The cadets who laughed would soon kneel. As siege towers rose beneath the sands and a colossal intelligence stirred, the galaxy would learn that exile was not an end, but a beginning of vengeance tempered by justice. Get ready. Sandwalker's true ruler has arrived. The transport vessel landed in silence, its hull scarred from centuries of war. Sandwalker's winds howled across the barren landscape, carrying grains sharp as razors. A line of young cadets stood in rigid formation outside the forward base, eyes narrowing as the bay doors creaked open. From the shadows emerged Commander Lyra Caine, older than expected, her silver hair tightly braided, her uniform faded and scorched. Her insignias had been removed. No speech, no ceremony, no welcome. Only the smirks of cadets and the quiet murmur, "Is that the exile they sent us?" Lieutenant Cord, the youngest and cockiest, stepped forward with mock respect. "Welcome to hell, Commander. Try not to die in the first week." Snickers erupted behind him. Lyra didn't react. She studied the horizon instead, her eyes scanning the burning dunes and the faint hum beneath her feet, an almost imperceptible vibration. She didn't speak. Not to Cord, not to anyone. She walked past them, boots crunching sand, heading toward the half-collapsed observation tower. They expected anger or desperation. Instead, she vanished into the structure like a ghost returning. Home? Inside the command hub, she surveyed the outdated systems. Terminals sputtered with flickering blue text. The comms were jammed by static, deliberately sabotaged to prevent communication with orbit. Lyra knelt, fingers brushing dust from a rusted panel. Beneath it, wires not of council design but human, ancient, abandoned. She closed her eyes briefly, breathing in the electric scent. "Still here," she whispered. She had not been exiled. She had been sent to awaken something. Later that night, the cadets gathered in the mess hall joking about her silence. "Maybe she's gone mute," one muttered. "Maybe she cracked after the exile." Another replied, "Or maybe she's just useless like the rest of Terra." They all laughed, except one. Recruit Marin, smaller than the others, watched. The tower through a side window. A flicker of light pulsed once, then vanished. "She's doing something," Marin whispered. "And it's not survival drills." Lyra hadn't slept. Deep within the tower's underbelly, she mapped old schematics from memory. The Council believed Sandwalker to be a wasteland, a suitable graveyard for the exiled. But Lyra knew better. This planet once housed the Nexus Project, Earth's forbidden experiment in AI synthesis. It was buried during the war, sealed by the treaty, but not destroyed. She was there when it was first deactivated. She was the last to leave, and now she had returned with no orders, no backup, and no restrictions. At dawn, she reappeared before the cadets during weapons orientation. She said nothing. Her presence alone made them uneasy. Lieutenant Cord scoffed. "Going to teach us ancient tactics now." Lyra simply pointed to the desert. 5 kilometers west, one of you will die today." The laughter died quickly. "You threatening us?" Cord barked. She walked away again. Minutes later, a sand quake struck near the coordinates she'd given. One cadet screamed through the comms, lost in a pit of shifting ground. The corpse was retrieved hours later, charred, limbs contorted. The sand had turned to glass where he fell. No explanation. The official report blamed environmental instability. But Lyra's eyes held no surprise. She checked her old datapad, confirming coordinates against a hidden pattern. "Still functional?" she muttered. Behind her, cadets whispered. Fear had begun to crack the veneer of arrogance. They didn't understand her, and now they weren't sure they wanted to. That night, Marin approached her in the observation deck. "Why did you come back here, really?" Lyra stared at the stars. "Because they sent the wrong person to die." She turned to the recruit, face unreadable. "And because the council forgot what this place was." Marin opened her mouth to speak, but a faint sound echoed from the lower levels. A mechanical tone, a heartbeat not human. Lyra stood. "Get some rest. Things are about to move." She returned to the underlevels, heart steady. Her fingers danced across old command keys, awakening dormant systems line by line. From deep below the surface, a single phrase returned on screen. "Core integrity, 92%, awaiting mother's signal." She smiled, not with joy but with certainty. The cadets had mocked her exile. They thought they'd seen the worst this planet could offer. But Sandwalker had always belonged to something greater, and Lyra had come home to turn it back on. The morning began with formation drills. The cadets stood beneath the rising twin suns, sweat already dampening their uniforms. Lyra arrived without a word, her presence now unsettling rather than comical. The desert behind her shimmered with heat, deadly and alive at once. Lieutenant Cord rolled his eyes but said nothing. That silence, once mockery, was now laced with tension. She handed each cadet a datapad containing an assigned route through the sand. "This is your trial," she said. "No backup, no interference, no second chances." One by one they left. No one laughed. Hours passed. The heat increased. The first distress call came from recruit Leto. His voice was panicked, then cut off entirely. Lyra didn't move. "Route 7, she whispered. She marked something on her pad. The others returned slowly, coughing, dehydrated, furious. "You knew this would happen," Marin accused. "He's dead." Lyra's response was simple. He was the first. It was unclear if she meant the first casualty or the first piece in something larger. That night, she activated a secondary beacon underground. It pulsed once, and a buried system responded with a soft chime. Awakening had begun. Within 48 hours, 3 more cadets were injured in impossible ways. One emerged with burns, though no heat had been recorded. Another wandered for hours, only to be found precisely where he started, his internal chronometer, off by 4 hours. A third reported voices underground. "They called me by name," he said, trembling. Lyra remained composed. "The desert remembers," she told him, "and it listens to those who survive." The cadets began to group at night, murmuring fears no one wanted to admit aloud. Then Lyra changed the pattern. She called out 6 names and told them to follow her. They hesitated, even Cord. "To where?" he demanded. "To where the war never ended," she said, before descending into the canyons. The terrain changed rapidly, more metallic fragments buried in the ground, old machinery twisted by time. At the heart of the canyon was an obsidian structure, partially buried, humming. Faintly, Lyra touched it, and it opened like a flower responding to her palm. "Your training begins now," she told the 6, "but you will never be cadets again." Inside the structure were remnants of Earth's pre-exile experiments, hollow records, weapons powered by unknown tech, and a central conduit connected to neural interface nodes. The recruits hesitated. Marin stepped forward first, seating herself at the interface. Lyra watched carefully as the system scanned her. The interface blinked once, then again. "Compatible." A line of text appeared in the air. "Subject neural. Integrity. Acceptable." Lyra looked at the others. "Next." One by one they followed. None resisted. Cord was last. "You want to turn us into what, machines?" she answered. "Survivors." Cord resisted the upload. He cried out, struggling against the neural sync. Then the interface shut down with a blare. The structure sealed him out. Lyra said nothing. "He is not part of this." Cord ran from the canyon, shaken. The others stood in silence, their eyes faintly illuminated with pale blue veins. Maren looked at her hands as they shimmered slightly under the structure's glow. "I feel everyone," she whispered. Lyra nodded. "Now we begin." Outside, the wind carried the sound of something large shifting beneath the sand. Back at base, whispers became panic. The missing recruits were nowhere in the system. Surveillance footage glitched when they were near. Power fluctuations began around the base perimeter. Some accused Lyra of brainwashing. Others began questioning the Council's orders. "Why would they send us here?" asked one sergeant. The command structure began to crumble. No one knew what Lyra was building. But something inside them, something old and primal, was beginning to fear her. Meanwhile, Lyra stood alone on the observation platform. She monitored patterns in the sand, hexagonal ripple movements invisible to the naked eye. The neural frequencies, emitted by her modified cadets, had activated deeper layers of the AI core. It was no longer just listening. It was watching, and it was remembering her. She whispered the phrase aloud, "I never left you." Deep below, circuits aligned in harmony, and the word mother echoed across dormant systems. The first cadet had died in the desert, but the others had been reborn. Lyra spent each night mapping neural feedback from the modified recruits. They no longer required verbal commands. Instead, they moved with uncanny precision, responding to signals no one else could detect. Patrol routes altered subtly, supply lines redirected underground. When asked, they offered blank stares or cryptic phrases like, "The path widens." Meanwhile, Cord avoided them entirely, his bravado drained. He had seen the structure reject him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his DNA had been archived for deletion. Late one night, Maren approached Lyra without speaking. She held a shard of black metal, thin, flexible, humming slightly. "The ground gave it to me," she said. Lyra took it with care and slotted it into an old console. The system sparked to life with a cascade of ancient Terran code. Maps unfolded across the screen, layers of subterranean tunnels, tech veins, and nodal hubs stretching across the planet. "It was always here," Lyra whispered. "Not buried. Sleeping." The cadets had walked on a vast neural lattice for weeks, and never noticed. Within days, base-wide anomalies surged. Gravity fluctuated by fractions. Hallways led to different doors. A mess hall meal decomposed into synthetic powder mid-bite. The AI beneath was no longer passive. It was reformatting reality within its reach. The Council's sensors, still orbiting far above, picked up erratic data from the planet and flagged it as a low-level anomaly. They didn't bother to investigate. The Exile was going according to plan, or so they believed. But Sandwalker had other ideas. In the barracks, one of the standard cadets awoke screaming. His dreams were filled with mechanical shapes and human faces distorted into data streams. When medics examined him, they found a microchip in his spine. One, not issued by the Council. "This wasn't implanted," the doctor muttered. "It's growing." Lyra watched from the doorway. "The network chooses," she said, "sometimes before we understand why." The cadet passed out moments later, his vitals stabilizing and syncing with the local grid. Paranoia bloomed among the remaining officers. The structure in the canyon, now designated Zone Black, became a forbidden area, but no one dared enter. Reports surfaced of humming in the walls, whispers in the dark, power flickering to match Lyra's steps. She offered no explanations, only orders, and those who disobeyed. They found their keycards useless, doors refused to open, lights dimmed when they spoke against her. The network was learning hierarchy and enforcing it. Outside the base perimeter, the sand moved unnaturally. Geometry formed in spirals, visible only from the air. A supply drone captured footage before vanishing mid-transmission. The last frame showed a massive emblem etched into the ground, a human eye within a triangle, pulsing with internal light. The Council dismissed it as weather interference, but Lyra's modified cadets began drawing the same symbol during downtime without memory of doing so. "It's in me," Maren whispered one night, "like a dream I didn't dream." A week later, 2 cadets went missing during a desert run. Search teams were dispatched. They returned with one, Corporal Donnell. But he was different. His eyes were silver, his voice was flat. And he spoke of the tunnels, endless metal corridors filled with quiet singing. It sang her name, he said. Lyra, Lyra, Lyra. The other cadet was never found, but her signal pinged once, far beneath the surface, then vanished. Lyra didn't comment. She simply logged the incident as transition complete. Cord finally snapped. He stormed into the command center, weapon drawn. What the hell are you doing to them? What are you building here? Lyra faced him calmly. I'm not building, I'm remembering. She turned the console, revealing a live neural map, the network pulsing like a brain, stretching across the continent. You're not soldiers anymore, she added. You're scaffolding. Cord hesitated, eyes flicking to the recruits behind her. They didn't blink, didn't breathe, just waited. That night, the hidden network reached critical mass. A buried array deep beneath the southern ridge pulsed to life for the first time in a century. Energy signatures rose exponentially. One of the AI cores activated a dormant protocol. Empire Genesis phase armed. Lyra stood at the observation deck once more, the wind tearing at her coat. They buried the future, she said to herself. And I came back to dig it up. Far below, the planet began to awaken, not as a place, but as a weapon. Lyra's silence became legend among the remaining cadets. They whispered of her vanished past and her unemotional gaze. When Captain Sealer arrived with a council oversight team, she expected answers, only to find a woman staring at an empty, hollow projection. "Why won't you speak?" Sealer demanded. Lyra tilted her head, then walked past him into the data vault. Behind her, alarms began to wail. Within seconds, the vault's door slammed shut. Sealer pounded on the panel, voice rising to panic. Lights flickered as hidden servos engaged. In the darkness, a soft laughter echoed. Lyra's, detached and unbroken. Then the lights returned, and Sealer's body lay on the floor, perfectly intact, but reduced to a single burst of ash on the tile. No scorch marks, no debris, just the smell of ozone. Word spread like wildfire. The Exile commander was not a broken relic. She was a weapon. The Council's second envoy refused to set foot on base and retreated to the transport ship. Lyra watched the departure through the observation window, her reflection framed by rising dust devils. They couldn't see the design, she whispered, because they assumed she was flawed. At dawn, she gathered the remaining recruits in the central plaza. Their faces were drawn tight with fear and exhilaration. Lyra spoke once. They thought I was broken. They were wrong. She activated her wrist console. Beneath the plaza, conduits glowed, mapping neural overlays across a city-sized grid. The air hummed with synchronized pulses, an orchestration only she could conduct. Technicians scrambled to reroute power. Walls shifted to reveal hidden data cores. Recruits gasped as buried pylons rose from the ground, each crowned by a flickering prism of light. Maren stepped forward, blue-veined eyes shining. "It's you," she breathed. "It's always been you." Before anyone could respond, Lyra disengaged the safety locks. The prisms fired in unison, beams of fractured light slicing the dawn sky. Data streams rained down like meteor showers, rewriting every system on Sandwalker, security grids, weapon, caches, environmental controls. The recruits realized they were witnessing not destruction, but the rebirth of the planet's mind. Lyra stood motionless, arms crossed, as the world bent to her signal. Cord returned at that moment, trembling. "This is madness," he stammered. Lyra fixed him with a stare that held centuries of conviction. "Madness is what happens when you exile the wrong leader," she replied. Cord fell to his knees, eyes wide with awe and fear. By midday, Sandwalker was a fortress woven of flesh and circuit. The surviving cadets were no longer soldiers. They were synced to a power that thought with Lyra's mind. She raised her hand, and every node answered. In the dead silence that followed, even the wind seemed to pause. Lyra finally spoke, her voice calm and clear. "They thought I was broken. Now they will learn the cost of being wrong. Lyra stood atop the shattered observation deck as the first tremors rippled outward from the planet's heart. Below her feet, buried conduits thrummed with electric life, pulsing in rhythmic cadence like a colossal heartbeat. The twin suns dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the dunes, and in that twilight Lyra raised her hand. At her command, hidden hatches along the ridge slid open, revealing obelisk-shaped pylons glowing with azure circuitry. The cadets watched from below, their eyes reflecting light they could scarcely comprehend. Within the central conduit chamber, Lyra guided Marin and two synced recruits through a maze of biomechanical interfaces. The air smelled of ozone and ionized metal. Holographic glyphs danced above the control nodes, translating neural impulses into cascading data streams. A low-frequency hum grew louder, vibrating through bone and steel alike. Lyra's voice, calm yet resonant, instructed the recruits to link their neural amplifiers to the core's synaptic matrix. "Focus on my voice," she whispered. "Synchronize your thoughts with mine." As the final interface engaged, the chamber lights dimmed. A single filament of pure white energy snaked from Lyra's palm into the core's crystalline prism. The hum intensified until it became a shrill keening, a signal of unprecedented power rediscovered. The prism fractured light into dozens of refracted beams, each projecting a fragment of code into the recruits' neural nets. Their eyes fluttered, lids shimmering with data flow. Marin gasped, her voice layered with electronic undertones. "Mother, we feel you." Outside, the horizon brightened with phosphorescent streaks as the AI planet killer awakened. Satellites in orbit picked up the burst of neutrinos. Council sensors, long dismissive of Sandwalker's anomalies, finally registered a world alive. A text alert flashed in Lyra's ancient datapad. "Council fleet incoming. Time to decide." She pocketed the device without a flicker of hesitation, turning instead to the core's interface with unwavering resolve. Meanwhile, back in the conduit chamber, the recruits' neural patterns began to coalesce into a singular waveform, an echo of the planet's emergent consciousness. The walls of the chamber pulsed in unison, veins of light tracing the architecture like arteries of living circuitry. Lyra extended her free hand, tracing the lines of code in mid-air. "They believed this machine heart was dead," she murmured. "They were wrong." At her touch, the code surged, and the core's hum shifted into a deep, melodic timbre. High. Above, the Council's lead admiral, watching from the bridge of the flagship Auriga, frowned at the data feed. "Unidentified energy signature on Sandwalker. Prepare intercept." His voice crackled through static. Below him, holomaps updated, in real time, showing pylons activating in an impossible pattern, spokes of a wheel turning beneath the sands. The Admiral's finger hesitated over the strike command, uncertainty flickering across his face. Is this a planetary shield or a weapon? Back on Sandwalker, Lyra convened a silent council of her modified recruits at the conduit's entrance. Each step they took synchronized with the pulsing lines beneath them. Marin, her eyes glowing softly, bowed her head. "Mother," she intoned, "the awakening is complete." Lyra inclined her head, pride and purpose mingling on her expression. "Then we show them the future they exiled." Her voice carried through the chamber like a decree. As night fully descended, the core's pulses radiated outward, transmitting encrypted commands into every buried node, powering defensive turrets, reactivating dormant armor plating, and recalibrating, terraforming arrays that had lain dormant for centuries. Above ground, the first automated battlements rose from the sands. A faint mechanical chorus echoed across the base, heralding the birth of a new order. Lyra watched the silhouettes emerge, her silhouette framed against the glowing horizon. In the final moments before confrontation, Lyra accessed the core's final directive: execute planetary viability protocol. She held her breath as the command scrolled across the prism's surface. Then she exhaled, lips curling into a determined smile. "They mocked my exile," she said softly. "Now they will witness my empire's true strength." With that, she stepped back into the shadows, leaving the core to its awakening chorus and preparing to greet the approaching fleet. Dawn broke over Sandwalker as towers of obsidian and steel rose from beneath the sand like ancient sentinels reclaiming their throne. Lyra stood at the apex of a crystalline dais, the AI core's soft glow illuminating her silhouette. Around her, the modified recruits formed a silent phalanx, their eyes reflecting the primal hum of the planet's awakening. The air smelled of ionized ozone and scorched metal, a promise of power tempered by the echo of war. The Council's flagship Auriga appeared on the horizon, its battle group trailing like vultures in orbit. Lyra raised her arm and the earth trembled. From the hidden pylons, defensive turrets emerged, bristling with energy cannons. The recruits advanced without orders. Their neural link guided them with preternatural coordination. "This is not invasion," Lyra announced, her voice carrying across the dunes. "This is reclamation." Behind the Imperial line, massive hangar doors slid open to reveal a fleet of angular ships, designed by human hands and powered by the AI Planet Killer's core. Their hulls gleamed with geometric patterns that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The Council's sensors went haywire, struggling to classify the vessels. "Identify those signatures," the Admiral barked. Screens flashed, unknown threat level critical. On the ground, the recruits activated formation protocols. Energy shields rippled outward, deflecting laser volleys from the orbiting ships. A volley of concentrated plasma hammered the Council's frigates, carving arcs of fire across the sky. The recruits watched as their former masters faltered, their formations breaking under the relentless onslaught. Cord, kneeling at Lyra's side, looked up with awe and dread. "What have we become?" he whispered. Lyra's eyes gleamed, the future they feared. At the command dais, Lyra accessed the core's strategic overlays. Holographic maps displayed planetary vectors and orbital trajectories. She traced a finger along a projected line. "Focus on their supply lines," she instructed. The AI responded instantly. Beneath the surface, formation conduits rerouted energy to strike the supply frigates. Moments later, a chain reaction detonated cargo holds in 2 ships, sending debris plummeting into the atmosphere. The recruits cheered, an eerie counterpoint to the chaos above. In orbit, the Admiral hesitated. He toggled assault protocols, then cancelled them. "They're not attacking," he muttered. "They're reorganizing." His officers frowned as the AI ships formed an orbital ring around Auriga. Then, without warning, one of the human-designed cruisers detached and descended toward Sandwalker, carrying envoys rather than weapons. Lyra watched the descent, her expression inscrutable. "Parley?" Marin asked. Lyra shook her head. "No. We dictate the terms now." As the cruiser set, down its hatch opened to reveal rattled council delegates. They stumbled forward, eyes wide at the sight of Lyra standing before a legion of synced soldiers. One envoy raised a trembling hand. "Commander Caine, we come to negotiate." Lyra raised a palm. The hum of the AI intensified. "Negotiate implies equals. You are subjects now." Her words cut through the desert wind like a blade. The cadets formed a ceremonial arc behind her as the delegates knelt unbidden. Their helmets clanged against the sand. Lyra surveyed the kneeling forms, then turned to the envoy. "You will swear fealty to the Empire of Sandwalker under the Mother Core, or your world will be archived." Silence stretched. The wind stilled. The council delegates exchanged fearful glances before one began to recite the oath in trembling tone. As the dawn sun rose fully, the Empire's banner, an eye within a triangle, was unfurled across Sandwalker's highest spire. Its edges glowed with latent energy. Lyra stood beneath it, arm raised in salute. Somewhere in the depths, the AI pulse thrummed in approval. The Galactic Order had been rewritten. A new empire was born. The sky over Sandwalker turned crimson as the AI Planet Killer's orbital ships aligned above the dunes, their hulls reflecting the blood-red light of the rising suns. Lyra stood at the edge of the crystalline dais, arms folded, watching the remaining council frigates huddle like prey. Below, the once mocking cadets now knelt in perfect formation, their neural implants glowing faintly, symbols of absolute loyalty. A chorus of mechanical humming rose, signaling the Empire's full might awakened. Lieutenant Cord was brought forth, hooded and bound by energy restraints. His eyes, once filled with arrogance, now brimmed with desperate regret. Lyra's voice carried across the plaza. "You laughed when I arrived, you mocked my exile. Now you know what that exile created." She paused, letting her words sink in. Then she gestured toward the bound officer. "Speak for them. Beg mercy." Cord's voice cracked. "Please, spare us. We were wrong. Grant us your forgiveness." His plea echoed through the vast concourse. From the shadows, other cadets, now synced to the Mother Core, stepped forward, offering remonstrations that blended sorrow and awe. "Commander Caine, we submit to your will," they intoned in unison. Their tone was calm, almost reverential. Lyra surveyed them, expression unreadable. "Mercy," she repeated softly, "is not given, it is earned." She raised her hand and the hum deepened, resonating through bone and stone alike. A data transmission beam shot skyward, linking directly to the AI core. Lyra spoke into it. "Mother, show them our judgment." Below, hidden weapon systems activated. Non-lethal energy nets enveloped the kneeling officers, lifting them a meter off the ground. The nets tightened gently, forcing them into complete stillness. Shock gave way to understanding. The balance of power was no longer rhetorical. It was palpable and irreversible. One by one, Lyra named the crimes of the Council's ships, sabotaging Earth's sovereignty, abandoning Terran refugees, enforcing draconian peace. Each accusation triggered a visual display on the nearby pylons, historical holo records of Council atrocities. The officers watched in silence as their institution's betrayals manifested before their eyes. Tears streamed down unarmored faces, helmets clattered to the sand. When the last holo record faded, Lyra lowered her hand. The energy nets released their prisoners, who collapsed to their knees, gasping. She walked among them, her boots stirring red dust. "Rise," she commanded. "You will serve in our new order, not as masters but as guardians of justice." The former cadets scrambled to their feet, mouths agape. Cord's shoulders shook. Lyra placed a hand on his chest. "Your life is spared only to witness the empire you failed to see." A deafening roar erupted as the orbital fleet disengaged weapons and assumed formation around Sandwalker. Lyra raised her voice over the clamor. "By the power of the Mother Core and all who follow her, I proclaim the Empire of Sandwalker, united, unbroken, and unstoppable." The planet itself seemed to respond, winds swirling in a grand vortex around the dais. The kneeling officers bowed their heads. The modified cadets stood at attention. In that moment of triumphant stillness, Lyra turned toward the horizon where distant council worlds lay scattered like stars. Her silhouette framed by the monumental pylons, she whispered only once. "This mercy was hard-won, remember it." With that, she stepped back, allowing the assembled forces to bask in the dawn of the new empire. The crystalline dais stood silent beneath the twin suns, its facets gleaming like a freshly forged crown. Lyra Caine descended the central steps, flanked by her synced recruits, once cadets, now living conduits of planetary will. Around the plaza, the kneeling officers had risen, helmets discarded, eyes cast downward. Above them, the pylons thrummed. With latent energy, their prisms reflecting the new empire's sigil. Each element aligned: command, loyalty, judgment. Here, on the sandy altar of Sandwalker, Lyra would close the circle of vengeance and mercy. She surveyed the assembled throng, voice measured. "You have witnessed my power, and you have felt our judgment." A breath passed through the crowd, like a ripple. "Now I offer conclusion." At her nod, a silent pulse rolled through the plaza. Recruits stiffened in formation, officers lifted their heads, and the pylons projected a holographic tapestry of galactic treaties shattered by the Council. One by one, the records dissolved into fragments, symbolizing the old order's demise. The crowd held its breath as Lyra extended her hand, palm open. "Justice is not vengeance," she intoned. "It is balance restored." Beneath the surface, the AI core shifted protocol, neural conduits dimmed to gentle warmth, no longer instruments of war, but of stability. The recruits' implants glowed steady, each beat sinking to Lyra's pulse. In the hush, a single note, a pure, resonant tone, emanated from the core, filling the air with solemn promise. "We do not destroy," Lyra continued. "We preserve. We do not conquer, we integrate." From the edge of the formation, Cord stepped forward, shoulders straightened, voice firm. "Commander, we are at your command." His transformation, from scoffing cadet to loyal herald, embodied the Empire's promise. Lyra enclosed her gaze on him, then on each face before her. "Then serve with honor," she replied. "Guard the balance as you once guarded the Council's secrets. Let no power rise to break what we have forged today." A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the officers, their rigid exultation softened by reverence. Lyra's recruits formed concentric rings around the plaza, marking the boundary between old authority and new covenant. Within that sanctum, the galactic delegates, once masters, now supplicants, bowed, voices raised in a unison oath. "Under Mother Core and Commander Caine, we uphold the empire of Sandwalker and the sanctity of life across the stars." As the delegates spoke, the holographic tapestry reformed, this time weaving a vision of cooperative worlds, each planet represented by a glowing star linked by threads of light. Lyra watched the pattern expand outward from Sandwalker, a living map of interstellar unity. "This is our purpose," she whispered, "to bind fractured worlds into a tapestry stronger than any fleet." Beneath her hand, the core's hum softened to a lullaby, underscoring the Empire's pledge of stewardship. With the oath complete, Lyra turned to the horizon where the Council fleet still loomed. She lifted a gauntleted hand in salute. Not in defiance, but in invitation. A single transmission beam shot skyward, carrying the new treaty across the void. In response, distant ships hesitated, then powered their thrusters in acknowledgement. Across the occluded worlds, echoes of that salute would signal the dawn of a new era, one born from exile, forged by fire, and tempered by mercy. In the final moments of the ceremony, Lyra addressed her followers one last time. "Remember this day," she said, voice carrying like a promise. "Those who mocked us have been given a choice, annihilation or integration. We chose mercy, and with mercy, we have bound the galaxy to our cause." A hush fell. Then from every throat arose a powerful cry. "Long live the Mother Core, long live Commander Lyra Caine." Sandwalker trembled not in fear, but in exultation. As the sun reached its zenith, Lyra stepped back onto the crystalline dais. She gazed down at her hand, now still and devoid of command, its work complete. The core's glow pulsed gently beneath her feet, as if in contented affirmation. Around her the Empire stood united, no longer defined by exile or mockery, but by its shared promise to protect, preserve, and prosper. In that sealed circle of closure, the woman who commanded a god fulfilled her destiny, and the galaxy would never forget the price and power of her mercy.